Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Eat, Pray, Faith podcast with Tracey. That is me. I am Dr. Tracey Stroup, and I'm so excited you're here. Today, we're going to be talking about a really cool topic called Beyond the Bloodwork. This is actually a course that I teach for practitioners and for lay people just to learn how to look at a simple baseline panel, which would be a compilation of your comprehensive blood count, your comprehensive metabolic panel, along with your lipid panel, which is your cholesterol panel, and your serum iron panel. There are many other tests that we can look at, and I do an entire class on that, including Epstein-Barr and Lyme disease. But for the purpose of this podcast today, I wanted to give you some information so that you can go get your CBC, your CMP, and take a glance at it and really understand what are those numbers and what do they mean. So one of the things that I try to talk to people about is the words normal versus functional. So when I look at blood work, I'm not looking at normal ranges. You know, a normal range can be so extensive. Let's just take TSH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone. And thyroid stimulating hormone can have a range of 0.45 to 4.5. And that's considered normal. But one of the things that happens is people don't feel good at the same range. So my TSH being at 2.6 might be optimal or functional for me, where for someone else, it may be too high or too low. So the only reason I use that as an example is because most people will go into the doctor, they'll get, a complete blood count done, a CBC with differential done, and their CMP and all the other things. And the doctor will tell them, well, everything's within normal range. You should feel fine, when they don't feel fine. And so they continue to come back and complain about the same symptoms that they were having. And the doctor keeps telling them the blood work is normal, except they don't feel fine. And so eventually that practitioner will say to the person, maybe you're just depressed. You need this pharmaceutical or this script, and that will help. And so I think we get dismissed a lot because we don't have the educational eyes to look upon blood work and say, you know what, this is in a functional range for me. And I need these numbers to be more centered for my individual health and body. The other thing that we're going to talk about today very quickly, and I'm going to do this real high level, guys, because without actually looking at your comprehensive metabolic panel or your CBC or your serum iron or your cholesterol panel, it's hard to really express everything that I want to talk about and also give you some solutions for it. But I'm going to give you some enlightenment so that you don't think that you're crazy, or if you're continuing to go to a practitioner and they're dismissing you because your blood work is normal, then you will have a little bit more insight as to why maybe you feel the way you still feel and you're not getting the results you want. So let's look at what we call the complete blood count, which is the CBC. And I always ask for what are called differentials. And differentials are just the white blood cell count broken out into different types of white blood cells, such as lymphocytes, basophils, eosinophils, and neutrophils. And so for me, I like the differential because then I can see what your white blood cells are actually trying to shoot at. Now, again, I said I looked at functional levels. These are tighter numbers for me. I'm not going to go over all of the numbers today, but I will go over a specific few so that you can turn around and say, you know what? I need to research this more. I need to learn more about my own body and my own blood work, which is what I'm hoping for you during this podcast. So, what is a complete blood count? Well, you're going to see blood work done in a bunch of abbreviations. That's very normal. But with a baseline panel, there's some basic tests that they do. The CBC with differential, the comprehensive metabolic test, and also they'll do a lipid panel, which is your cholesterol. So today, if you have a CBC with differential, that would be in your baseline panel. It's a very common test. And if you would go have this done, here's a little newsflash. You don't need a medical provider to script you blood work. You can walk into any lab in your area, such as LabCorp or Quest, and you can have your own blood work drawn. It'll cost you out of pocket about $10 to $25. And I'm going to take a little side tangent right now on what does really health freedom mean. I hear the term medical freedom a lot, and I'm going to tell you guys I don't really believe that there's such thing as medical freedom, and hear me out. I'm not against the medical system at all. If your arm falls off or you need a surgery, that is what they are there for, and they are very good at what they do. They are acute trauma, and they are, acute care, emergency care. And what they do is beautiful. Somehow we've come to this position where pharmacology, symptom repression, and removing organs is now the norm in fixing issues with our health. And I'm here to say that if you want real health freedom, not medical freedom, then you need to start exploring for your family and yourself how to be empowered so that you know how to look at certain things, ask the right questions, and put in the solutions that will keep you out of the emergency room, that will keep you out of the medical care system. If you need it in the case of emergency, absolutely it's there, and that's what you should go for it. But we have taken the symptom repression by using pharmacology to repress our symptoms and organ removal as a solution set. And truly, for me, it's a little bit archaic. So I want to help people empower themselves to take their health back into their own hands, to know how to look at their blood work, to understand solutions that they can put in at home. That's why I have my home health resource guide, which I'll link here in the description of this podcast, along with teaching like this in my academy, which is the Academy of Abiding Wellness. I teach people, lay people, practitioners, just to put new eyes on old things. Because honestly, guys, it's been manipulated, and I like to say manipulated. Um, we're far away from what God intended for us. God has provided all things here. I always tell people he's a way maker. If he's made a way for salvation, he made a way for the Israelites out of Egypt, he will make a way for us as well. And he tells us in his word that he's given us all things here, and they are very good. And I tend to believe Jesus more than anybody. So with that said, the life is in the blood. And so we're going to look at that today. And sorry about my small tangent, but I want you guys to understand my passion is not for you to look at me as the resource, but to look at Christ. And second, to utilize his word and seeking him first, along with knowledge here that we can gain from him through science, because science is not the proof or disproof of God. It's a gift from God to show us his creation. And so the reason that I want to continue to empower you guys is so that you can take that back and you can seek out the wisdom of the Holy Spirit and move forward in your health. So tangent over, let's get to the CBC with differentials. So if you have one, bring it up, because I'm going to walk through exactly what we're looking at when we look at this complete blood count. So the first thing you'll probably see on a complete blood count is a white blood cell count. And white blood cells are blood cells, just so you're aware. And they're very important because they tell us that there's something going on in our body. Now, when I look at functional ranges, these are not things that if you would go to the doctor and you say, listen, my neutrophil range is too high for Tracey's liking. That practitioner may not even give you the time of day. So what I'm saying is, through my clinical experience, through taking classes from other great people who teach functional blood work, we're all kind of saying the same thing, is that these numbers are too wide. We need to narrow them, and we need to help people understand them so that they know what to do. So real quick, we're going to run through this CBC with differential. So white blood cell count, red blood cell count, you have your hemoglobin, your hematocrit, your MCV, which is mean corpus value, your MCH, your MCHC, your RDW, platelets, and then the differentials are neutrophils, lymphocytes, monocytes, basophils, and eosinophils. Not necessarily in that order, but that's what you'll see on a complete blood count. Okay, so white blood cell count is going to tell me if there's something going on underneath, which I like to call an instigator. This isn't an infection that is going to make you sniff, sniff, cough, cough, but it's just enough that if it's out of range or out of functional range and it's causing havoc, it's going to be one more thing that keeps your immune system busy. And so other contributors to the detriment of your health can be poor food, right? Nutritional choices. If you're eating the SAD diet, the standard American diet, I always tell people tree, ground, run, swim, fly. Falls from a tree, grows from the ground, runs in the field, swims in the ocean, flies in the sky. Organic, non-genetically modified, you can eat it. If God spoke it into existence and it can reproduce life on its own, it will be able to reproduce life in you. Very simple. Every time you open your mouth, you're either building a cell or destroying one. So that's first, foundation. You can't build a house of health on quicksand. You have to build it on a strong foundation. Just like Jesus built his church on a foundation, you have to build your health on a foundation. All the supplements and modalities on top of that, and pharmaceuticals when needed as necessary, is just nails that hold it together, but it's not the foundation. And if you build it on quicksand, your house will sink. I don't care how many supplements you take. So, nutrition, hydration, movement, sleep, elimination, emotional, spiritual wellness is where you're building your house of health. Everything else is just bells and whistles. So, when we talk about the white blood cell count, we're talking about the fact that there's an underlying instigator on top of poor sleep, not drinking enough water, you're not exercising enough, you have terrible thoughts, and you're eating poorly, and you have no relationship with Jesus. Everything's going to add up to your inflammation bucket, and you are going to have sickness. So today, walking out of here, you can control what you put in your mouth. You can go more whole food, organic, non-GMO. You can drink water. You can go to bed a little bit earlier tonight and get better quality of sleep. You can move a little bit if you're able to. And if you're not able to, you can do other things to detox, such as infrared saunas. Go sit in the sunshine for a little bit, sweat it out. Epsom salt bath, right? In your tub, like things that don't cost a lot of money, but you can do. Soak your feet in Epsom salt if you can't get in the tub. So if you're trying to find excuses why you can't, I will assure you, you won't. But if you can try to find a way that you can, I assure you, you will. It's very simple. So with the CBC, we're looking at white blood cell count between 5 and 8. That's where I like the functional range. Below 5, I know that you have something that's been going on for a while. There's an underlying instigator in there. If it's above 8, it's an acute something. Something's rising, could be an infection of some sort, like a bladder infection. So you have to look at those functional ranges. So if you're looking at your white blood cell count right now and you're like, whoa, that's way below 5, then let's take a look down the path a little bit. We're going to get to neutrophils and that, but let me pause on red blood cells, okay? So when we look at red blood cells, this is your oxygen capacity to carry oxygen to tissues. So if your red blood cells are low, then you don't have a lot of oxygen capacity to take to tissue. And guys, oxygen is where it's at. If you don't have oxygen, you're dead, right? You can go days without eating and days without drinking water, but only minutes without oxygen. And so if your cells are deprived, you're going to be deprived and your potential to recover is going to be low. When I see low oxygen potential of RBCs falling below 3.9 for women or below 4.4 for men, then I know that you need a little bit of iron availability in your cells. Does that mean you should start taking an iron supplement? I don't know. But knowing that you might have lower iron potential means that you could eat more iron-loving foods, such as liver would be a great one, organ meats, right? Proteins, and then being able to break those down. So one of the big things that I talk about is digestion, being on PPIs and acid reducers. All of that will contribute to the fact that you won't be able to break down proteins adequately and make amino acids. That's a whole other topic, and we'll talk about it. So red blood cell count below 3.9, below 4.4 for men, women, men, is going to have an indication that it's a low oxygenation of your cells, and also that you need a little bit of iron. So I would spinach, Popeye, for example, we all probably remember him. But iron-loving foods would be a great thing to put in. And if there is supplementation that you're looking for, we can talk about that. But again, I'm not going into solution sets here. If your red blood cell count is above 4.5 for females and 4.9 for men, that's a methylation issue. And I'm not going to go into a whole dissertation on what is methylation, but methylation simply is your body's ability to cellularly repair, methylate. Okay, methylate itself, form a methyl group that's going to bind to an amino acid and create new and healthy cells, immune cells, DNA, RNA, neurotransmitters, and hormones. When you can't methylate, you can't make new and healthy cells. If you can't methylate, or you're a poor methylator, such as an MTHFR mutation, or you simply live on this planet and you're stressed out and you don't sleep well, you're going to be a poor methylator. You also won't be able to convert homocysteine, which is a waste product of methylation, just like lactic acid is a waste product of exercise. But your body makes a way because God makes a way. And so if you have enough methyl groups, you'll be able to convert that homocysteine into methionine, into SAMe, and make new and healthy cells. Also have a balanced mood. But if you can't, then it becomes a waste product and you get a buildup of homocysteine in your blood, which is a cardiovascular marker. The other conversion that happens through methylation is the process of homocysteine to glutathione, our number one antioxidant. So as we can see, methylation is key. It's like the gasoline in our car. And so when we have good gasoline in our car, every other system will run well. Now, can you get a clogged carburetor and need new spark plugs? Sure. But you can change all those things. And if you don't have enough gasoline, it doesn't matter if you have a fresh new carburetor. It doesn't matter if you have new spark plugs if you don't have enough gasoline to go someplace. So your body at the core needs methylation. Your body needs iron. Every cell in your body needs iron, every single one. It's a main mineral conductor. So you've learned two things. A, if you can look at your white blood cell count and say, is there an underlying instigator that's been there contributing to my symptoms of, I don't know, long haul COVID, can't overcome, always getting sick? Am I deficient a little bit in iron? Do I need methylation enhancement? And you guys are probably going to say, well, what do I do? What do I take? I'm going to link a few products that are super simple, multivitamin that covers everything that I'm talking about today that you can start taking that's going to increase your ability to methylate well because it has methylated B vitamins. And if you have a vitamin that you're taking, make sure that it's a methylfolate on the back of the label or a methylcobalamin. You want bioavailable products at this point. We are too sick to try to allow our bodies to break things down to the most active form. And that's what methylated means. It just means most active form. So I am going to bring on my really good friend, product formulator and owner, CEO of Nutritional Frontiers, Jamie Dorley, in the future. And we're going to go through quality supplements and how to look at labels, because I think it's important, again, for you guys to be able to go out and read a label. So moving on. Hemoglobin, hematocrit, MCV, MCH, MCHC, RDW, and platelets all will tell me the same thing. Low iron or methylation. And this is the key factor of why we're seeing such increase in blood thickening and things that are going on, because if you got a synthetic jab put into your body, then you have destroyed your ability to methylate, and you're going to increase the homocysteine waste, and it's going to cause issues with blood. So there's always science behind what we're talking about. And I hear fragments out there of why people are sick or what's happening. But if you just learn to look at your blood work, you'll be able to overcome it. So I'm going to jump into the differentials right now, because this is the fun part. So I'm just going to give you a real high-end insight again. Again, I taught a whole course on this. So if you want to take it, I will link it in the details of this podcast. But I can't break this all out here in a 30-minute show. It's just not possible. Neutrophils are going to tell me all about bacteria. What bacteria? I don't know. It just gets me to ask better questions as a practitioner. And for you personally, if you know that you had an exposure to a bacteria, an infection with a bacteria, maybe you had a diagnosis of Lyme at one point, maybe you had a diagnosis of strep at one point. Those are bacterial instigators, and they can lay dormant. And there's actually and this, again, is not my opinion. This is science. The Journal of American Medical Association Psychology did an article on molecular mimicry, and they actually contributed over 85% of the mental issues that they see were somehow latent bacteria that the body was creating antibodies against, because it had the same epitope structure in the tissue of the person's neuroreceptors or thyroid versus what was in the bacteria and virus. And again, I talk about molecular mimicry in a lot of my blood work classes, but just so you know that there is science out there proving that there are underlying bacteria and viruses that aren't high enough to be diagnosable, that you actually have an expression of it, but they're just enough to be a pain to your immune system and keep it busy. So I only tell you that because you're not crazy. There's something going on. There's a reason you don't feel good and you need more power. So, all right, neutrophils tell me all about bacteria. I like those between 40 and 60%. Anything over 60% for me functionally is going to be an instigator to your body, to your immune system. I also look at neutrophils for gut issues, things like candida, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth issues where you get bacteria that shouldn't be there, or bacteria imbalance called dysbiosis. I had Natasha Trinev did a whole thing on probiotics, which is on my podcast series. If you want to go listen to it, she's going to come back for a webinar series starting tomorrow. You're welcome to join. It's free. It's 4 webinars. So again, I'll link everything in the details of this so that you have different places to go and learn. All right, lymphocytes are all about viruses. Anything above 30%, there's an underlying instigator, and it's going to contribute to challenging your immune system and making you feel bad overall. Monocytes is like it sounds, right? It sounds like mono. Well, this is underlying EBV, Epstein-Barr virus. Anything above 7% for me is going to be a flag. I'm going to take a look at it. I'm going to look at other patterns and numbers in your blood. I'm going to ask better questions. Again, I'm not diagnosing anything, but if you came into my office and said you ate a fast food every day, I don't have to be a diet to be able to diagnose you with an addiction to bad food. I would simply say that is going to contribute to the detriment of your health, and I would suggest that we take it out. The same thing goes here when we're talking about blood work and things that can be contributing instigators. And then eosinophils and basophils for me, eosinophils over 3% or basophils at 1 or greater are going to be indicative of parasites. Now, what kind of parasites? There's all kinds of parasites. There's helminths, there's flagella. People don't realize that Giardia is a parasite. People don't realize that malaria is a parasite. They think of worms and tapeworms, which they can be. Parasites aren't talked about here a lot in this country because we think that if we're not a third world country that we don't have this issue, but I assure you we do. And doing a parasite cleanse for yourself or for your family once or twice a year is great, especially if you have animals or if you're around different water sources, or co-infections of Lyme disease can be parasitic in nature. So guys, it's not a third world problem. It's a real world problem. We need to start addressing these things. And so I will say, if I see something like that, I'm going to recommend that somebody do a parasite cleanse. So you can also see all kinds of different molecular mimicry, which is going to be told to you as autoimmune. It's not necessarily autoimmune. It's just your body's doing friendly fire to the epitopes. And maybe we'll talk about that in a deeper podcast. But like I said, for today, I just wanted you to have a little bit of power on your CBC with differential. So if you have a complete blood count and you pull that out and you notice that you have an underlying instigator that's been there a while, you flip it over and you're like, oh my gosh, it could be bacterial, it could be viral, it could be parasites. Then you know that you're not crazy, that something is there that needs to be addressed. And that's where I would reach out to a practitioner and get a better direction. Now, not every practitioner does blood work or functional blood work in the ways that I look at it, non-diagnostic, but actually giving me better clues as to how do we fill potholes, build bridges, and take and move debris out of the way. So if you need somebody like me, I do have a whole team of telehealth practitioners that work with me. If you go to my site, www.tracey, Tracey, Stroup, Stroup, N as in Nancy, D as in dog, ND.com, TraceyStroupND.com. If you hit providers, there's a whole group of practitioners that I work with that are not only wonderful, but that I have also trained. So I just give you this information, guys, because you can go beyond the blood work of normal. You can find your functional, you can individualize your health and solutions for you and your family. And this isn't the only testing that's out there. It's just something that I'm really passionate about because when I came to Christ, and that's a whole different story of where I came from, but the life is in the blood. And God has provided us with ways to see, eyes to see, and ears to hear if we're open to it. And so there is a place and a space for everything, even for the medical system, but it shouldn't always be first. Guys, we have to take accountability and responsibility for our own health. Seek ye first the kingdom, and all these things will be given to you. We glean knowledge from each other, and we seek wisdom of the Holy Spirit and apply it to our life. That's the whole point to what God said. And then he has spoke everything into existence. And if it wasn't manipulated with GMOs and all the other stuff they did, if we can go back to the source of what God said was very good and give your body what it needs, it will do what it needs. So God bless you and keep you. His face shine upon you. Thank you for being here. Next week, we'll have Doug Godkin from Amio. He's coming in. We're going to learn all about silver. There's a lot of questions about that. As I said, lots of guests coming up. I've dropped all the links and everything I talked about today and the details of this podcast. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you next time.